Hello everyone, it is Joe here from OmniPoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. If you're looking for PTCGO codes, including the stuff from Silver Tempest, make sure you check out the Potown store. You can get a 5% discount on your orders using that code OmniPoke. For today's video, we have a week's worth of online data for the Silver Tempest format, starting back from the 12th of this month, and we're going to catch up on the top 8s and look at the deck lists of what's been performing well in this first week of Silver Tempest. Should be pretty interesting. We know, of course, we have the LAIC coming up very soon in just a week's time, and then a week after that, of course, we'll have the knee-jerk reaction from that, but there's a whole heap of regionals in 3 different regions, including Stuttgart, which I'll be attending, so I really do want to keep a close eye and have my finger on the pulse for Silver Tempest, so we are going to be looking at these weekly and seeing how the tournaments are shaking up. So the first one we're going to look at is the Tournament of Doom. I'm looking at ones where there are 80 plus players, so we have a good representation of metagame, and we have pretty strong records for all the decks we'll be looking at. The first win was actually with Hisuian Zoroark, and I was a little skeptical about Zoro, honestly, going into this new metagame. I thought it would be a little bit tricky against some of the one prizes that get stronger. I think Reggie gets more consistent, for example, stuff like that. But we can see Dunsparce Manaphy coming in. No Sharon's Care, which makes me still a little bit nervous in that matchup, I guess. I've even seen on the ladder actually some Radiant Alakazam coming into some Zoro builds. I think that gives you a bit of help against the Lugia matchup, so something I need to experiment with. Radiant Hawlucha is a weird one because I feel like Kiran Palkia maybe loses some meta share, so I think it gets a lot less value because you don't really need this against Mew too much either. So I can foresee the Radiant. Well, I'm certainly going to try out Alakazam, and I may try out some other Radiant Pokemon in here as well. But Zoro is still an effective racing deck. I'm very surprised that there's no Diancie in here. It's such an important card in a number of matchups, but hey-ho. Things that I do like, I like Silene Cologne. I would only play one of each, and I would prefer this space to be an Eldegoss, though, because it just gives you other access to things. One thing that I really like about the Zoroark deck is that you get to take out an amount of boss and add in an amount of Serena based on how comfortable you are to just add to your overall support account, so you get less just crumbed by path. That was something that I didn't really like about the Zoro. It had the same issues as Mew. Obviously a little bit less so because it played some supporters, but now we get to increase our support account so you don't just get wrecked by losing out on your Phantom Star V-Star power. So deck gains some internal consistency and is still decent at racing the multi-prize decks. It's reasonable at dealing with tank Lugia if you play the Radiant Alakazam, but it's quite bad into the Aurora list, I think. Let's have a look at Reggie's. Now, as of Silver Tempest, of course, the gift energies now work online, so you'll start seeing them in lists. So this is the first batch of data that we have with Reggie at its full power, which is great to see. And this list is opting to play 3 Serena in place of a number of Marnie, which I think is pretty intelligent, and I think that's exactly what I was thinking of. I've been flip-flopping between these two counts. I'm not sure which one I like best, because I still do like the Marnie Path Cheese combination that you sometimes have with this deck into a number of matchups. It can be really annoying for Lugia, can still be annoying for Mew and other stuff. So I'm between the 2 and the 3 Serenas in my personal Reggie, but I do like that this offers extra discard synergy for special energies, which is great. Playing a very high count of stadiums, which I definitely think makes a lot of sense right now. I know that Aurora Lugias could easily be adding in Collapsed, so having multiple bounces to that makes a lot of sense. And I even think that some Giratinas will be playing double Temple of Sinnoh now, so having this 5 counts that we saw popularized by Drew Kennett makes a ton of sense to me. I think it'll be something I'll look towards going forward, where 4 stadiums is the minimum, in my opinion, now for Reggie's going ahead. And I like that we get to add some gust. I think the reason why we're seeing the Dragon Energy Drago is because we have the Serenas in here as well, where you can punish evolving 2 prizes that little bit more easily. It's even just a good card against Tina in general, because you can do the Terra Spark play, take a 1 prize knockout and set 40s onto their Tinas, and then you can come in with the energy. So yeah, I think this gets more value going forward because of the Serenas. So yeah, very, very strong list. Interesting to just see the 1 gift and the 3 speeds. Sometimes you see two split of these. But otherwise, a very nice list to just take. I think Reggie's is still in a decent spot, and I think a number of people's tech cards go towards things like Lugia now instead. So there will still be hate out there for Reggie's, but maybe not as much as there was in the Origin format. we see a really interesting Lost Box, and Lost Box seems to be going in a new direction, where we are seeing Greninja Gate builds becoming more popular, and I think there's obviously a huge reason to like Raikou in this new set. Obviously, there are some Aurora builds of Lugia adding it to their own list, but what's not to say we can pair it up with the Gate manually, and we can use this lightning type coverage for one thing into the Palkia matchup and into Lugia, but also offering some spread option in here as well, which is naturally just good with a deck that plays Sableye, because you can punish Manaphy being in play just by mining them out and then Raikouing like the remainder of the board, so that's a pretty cool thing. I was always a fan of Greninja Gate builds of this deck, so I'm happy to be experimenting with this. We have some interesting flavors to play with as well with the Metal, Grass, and Lightning combination. Not really energies that we've had previously in a lot of these Gate builds, so I'm going to be playing around with that a little bit for sure. I need to show a list on the channel soon, actually, of where my head's at with some of this Gate shenanigan stuff. It's something I put a lot of time into previously. I'm surprised to see Paths as well as a Drapion. I guess you're still respecting Empoleon to an extent, but I don't really know if we need to respect Empoleon that much, even though the convention is, you know, as vulnerable as ever, I guess you could say. I really don't see many decks having space to play Empoleon, because it's, you know, not going to be helping out a number of matchups, to be perfectly honest. And any bit of meta share that Tina had as being like the best deck and Lost Box being a top 5 deck, I think a lot of that meta share gets eaten up by Lugia meta share, and Empoleon does nothing against that really. So yeah, there we go. Very cool to see the Sable Lost Boxes evolving, and maybe it's finally time to see some what you going to say? Some Greninja Gate builds of Lost Box doing well. We have a Wheezing Crobat, and I feared that this would be a deck coming into this format, mostly because neutralizing gas, one of the most effective means at dealing with Lugia and denying the Summoning Star, V-Star power, as well as just Archeops in general if they've done it pre-Wheezing, especially because many Lugia builds are playing very low counts of Rope, like probably none, and very low counts of Boss, like probably 1. So the neutralizing gas can neutralize the deck quite handily, especially when there's also Hammers and Ariados in here to deny just like manual attachments throughout the game. I like this little 1-1 package. It has a lot of synergy when you already play Piers to get the Spinnerack out early, so I think that's very cheeky. You get to play Serenas now as well, which is also adding to the consistency of this deck, which has always been a headache of mine. Like, I know you have Dark Asset from Crobat, but gaining Forest Sealstones and some additional draw supporters in Serena makes me a lot more comfortable to play a deck like this. So I need to give Crobat some more time, to be honest. I think it could be an annoying deck in the format. Wheezing is already very effective, very annoying for Lost Engines, very annoying for Lugia. So yeah, worth experimenting with, and it may not be the only time we see some dark stuff. I think the Eternatus stuff is probably a step too far, but I think Wheezing Crobat Poison Annoyance could be a deck in the game, especially if things like the Lugia deck stay at the very, very top echelon, so it's not a surprise to see that making a huge comeback. We see a classic Lost Box as well, continuing to do well, not too much, basically no surprises, no thrills in this list. This is just like a pre-Silver Tempest 60, essentially. So there you go. It's playing like a couple different counts, like it's only playing 2 vacuums, but yeah, and it's playing like a Zigzagoon, but this was basically a tried and trusted decent list, I guess. Of course, on the 12th of November, it was still difficult for some people to access cards, so there were probably minimal changes, like just adding Serenas, and man, I love this. I'm surprised there's no Roxanne still, of course. You're giving yourself no defense mode. But when you play Lost Mine and Greninja, I think you have already so much coverage into one prize stuff that you can just play 2 Serenas in your Tina and be like very comfortable with that. And the double Sinnoh definitely respecting Lugia. Even the belt, I think, to an extent, is respecting Lugia. And I guess you're not playing Drapion, so giving yourself belt also helps Mew. So this potentially could be the replacement of Drapion. I know it's a hard card to find, but being that helpful card against Mew, if you do ever see it in time, as well as being a helpful card against Lugia, trumps the fact that it could be a Drapion that's bad in every other matchup. So that's an interesting sort of decision. getting you around V-Guard energies. May not only be Lugia, where you need to get rid of V-Guard as well, or get around V-Guard, I should say. So definitely an interesting include there of Belt. I thought it was like a matter of time for that to happen, so it's cool to see it implemented early on as a potential option. We see a Shadow Rider Unknown deck. My goodness, what to say about this? I don't look at any of these lists beforehand, I promise you that. Yeah. What was the record? 5-2-1. This got 5 wins. Okay. Well, it beat some of the meta decks. It lost and tied to Tina, which makes me nervous about the deck. It won and lost to a Zoro. I feel like you should be losing to Zoro, right? I guess you can, if you can Shadow Rider V lock the Zoro, you can win just by misting them out of the game. But yeah, interesting deck. I don't feel like there's a reason for Shadow Rider to really be a deck in the game, to be honest. Like, I'll just throw that out there. I think there's going to be a lot of path hate and other like ability hate. Like I was saying, Weezing possibly could be making a name for itself in the metagame. So I don't see a huge reason to like this, to be honest. It still has its issues against the Tinas of the world and other stuff like that, so... I mean, good on you, but I'm not expecting huge things from Shadow Rider, despite being a pretty good card in a vacuum. Mew as well, the Sparkle Mew, definitely going to be a force in this metagame. The Forest Seal Stone, which is a tongue twister, is definitely improving this deck's combo potential. They're going full combo with the catchers in here as well. Playing a Fan of Waves tech to try and remove V-Guard energies, I would expect, but also being a headache against other stuff randomly using captures and DTs and stuff like that, which is kind of interesting. Really like that, again, this gets to play Serenas, and when you're playing catchers, again, you don't feel bad about not playing boss, and you have Silene anyway for some recovery. I'm a little bit worried about the lack of Stadium Bounce. Like, my Sealstone, even my aggressive, like, Meloetta build, obviously I wasn't playing catchers, but I still liked having just a higher count of stadiums. The Sealstone feels bad if you're just going for a Stadium Bounce, and you want to try and protect this Sealstone anyway. And in a combo deck like this, you end up using it turn 1 regardless, so you don't actually give yourself many bounces to Stadium at all. So I'd like to see at least 3 still be in this list to add to your overall bounce counts in the opening stages, but also means that you're like able to aggressively Sealstone and not feel so terrible about it. So just a little thing there. But yeah, Mew, still a good deck. I feel like the only deck that I would expect to play Drapion would be Giratina Lost Box. That would be it. I think and maybe like a 1-prize Lost Box still plays it, but I don't expect much else to. Let's move on to the Cartado Ultra Challenge, where the winning deck was Zoroark. Rubs hands. Insane. I'm really excited to see Zoroark actually being like maybe a viable deck. And look at the support account. It's playing a very high count of Serena with the Breaks In. Breaks In does 60 times the amount of Serena in your discard pile, so bit of a combo. I honestly think this is actually bait. I think this is one of the weakest parts of the Zoro lists that I've seen recently. Like, for me, Breaks In comes online way too slowly, and by that point in the game, you can have higher damage output from almost every other one of your stage 1s. So I feel like the Breaks In part is bad, but what I'm just happy about in general is that a Heavy Sincero Zoro with this package of Raichu, Appleton, Mightyena, Slowbro, and Flapple, I think that's your core, really, is doing well. That's what makes me very excited. I feel like some of this stuff is fluffy, like the Hisuian Zoro, the Breaks In. Wormadam is your questionable fighting type. I think these are slots that we can play around with and improve, even the Guru to an extent. These are things that I would definitely sort of work with and try and tweak. But I just love that we can play a deck with these sorts of counts and it actually works, which is kind of crazy. A lot of Gust in here. Palpad, Boss, and Force Arena. That's pretty wild. Got a couple Rod and 1 Carrier, playing no Claras, but I guess you have all this item recovery anyway. A little bit worrying if you are up against like a Vikavolt, but hey ho. It's playing the Radiant Jirachi Glimwood thing, and this is a bit of a meme, obviously. But just the early Radiant Jirachi is actually kind of interesting because you give yourself like this 25% to basically win on the spot if you get double heads. And I have been double heads on the ladder already, and as soon as it happens, like, you get emoted and it's a meme, but you actually really can't win the game against Zoro because it's netted like 2 prizes from Jirachi, it nets 2 from Slowbro, and it has the entire remainder of the game just to take a 2-prize knockout, and that's so crazy. Especially when you trigger, like, the pressure that this puts on. I know it's a grief that it sticks around on the board, but sometimes you just have to hit through this, and then you allow them to get a ton of stage 1s and get rolling in the game. So this is a surprisingly decent card in Zoroark. It's super wacky, but yeah, very helpful. I'm interested in how the energy count ends up. Obviously, the early list I put on my channel was Radiant Zard. If we end up having enough decent stage 1s, we could end up going to just twins and double turbos, or twins and captures, and that could be really cool. Having capture energy Basculin or capture energy and an extra Mincino as well makes me pretty happy just to get stuff into play as well. So a lot of stuff to experiment with Zoroark, but generally we're there. I think we have enough stage 1s that the deck can be viable, and Serena allows you to steal enough space and play a stupid enough amount of supporters that the deck still actually works. So yeah, I think Zoroark is actually not a meme deck in the game. This is the first result of hopefully many as we get some Zoro believers going forward. I think it's still obviously farmed by Lost Box, which is going to keep it down a little bit in play. So I still think it's like on the bottom end of the top 10 of decks, but it's actually maybe even in the top 10 of decks at the moment. So insane. Right, as we see a Lost Box that's just going to farm it, of course. Not too much to say here. Not playing any Serenas, which is weird when you play triple Sableye. I would definitely do that. Don't see a reason not to. But yeah, this is a Pokestop based build with the capes as well for like mirrors and a few other situations where Zard can tank. Kind of interesting. Very low on the fog count as well. Fog is so busted in this deck. But there we go. We have a couple Tinas still doing well. Remember, this is still the first week, so a lot of the time people won't have the stuff for Lugia just yet. We may see some later. This is triple Temple. Pretty crazy that there's that much respect being given to Regis and Lugia. But there you go. It's got the thick Tina. It's playing 2 Lightning Energy for Raikou as well, so a ton of tech for Lugia. Definitely trying out some stuff here. And the double Roxanne as well. Some interesting counts going on. Very surprised to still see 2 boss. Again, you play Sableye, you play Greninja. You can add an extra draw supporter to your deck. It's reasonable. And then we see a more sort of well, I guess I should say, yeah, a pre-Tempest list. Where it's just playing the 1 temple, the 4 captures still in the list. So yeah, this is more or less just what you would have played before Tempest, and you just kind of jam it again and see how the format responds to you, which is a reasonable thing. Right, so we see our first Arc Dura. Definitely some murmurs that this card will be coming back in some capacity because you have the Skyscraper Parasol combo, which can shut down Lugia, even the Aurora builds, because you can Parasol to deny Yveltal. The Skyscraper good in general. If you're up against a pure like colorless build of the Lugia, you force them to have pass at the same time as well. Of course, they are playing Gigas sometimes, or even slacking, and these can reach on Duraludon, so I have my suspicions that this is actually bait, and I think Duraludon is actually copium still. I feel like it's going to be a low-tier deck. The things I do like about this deck is that you gain Serenas, which allow you to draw some more cards, so you brick less, and that's really huge for a deck that has no actual draw engine. Giving yourself even just 2 more cards that can draw cards in the opening stages is really cool, so I'm a fan of that. Outside of that, I still feel like you can be weak into Lugia, which is quite sad. I think Lugia, you don't have any disruption. You don't play like path disruption, so you don't slow them down. They do their plan A like pretty easily. And their plan A, when given enough time to find their Stadium Bounce plus Yveltal, their Parasol Bounce plus Yveltal, or you find Path plus Slacking Gigas or whatever. As long as they can time that correctly and get through one Duraludon, it's usually enough, because they can spend early powerfuls dealing with the Arceus, and it's really hard for Duraludon to even, it's hard for them to power up 2 Duraludons by the time you've dealt with their Arceus. It just doesn't happen very often. They have to have really low rolled. So I'm expecting Dura to see an uptick in play, but not an uptick in results. We see Gigas again. So the 2-2 split also very reasonable here. This time just playing more shoes. Just the 3 stadiums, which I've already mentioned, I'm not super high on. But these are just counts that we're looking at. Gigas is still Gigas and is still a good deck. We see our first Lugia with a 6-2 record. This is an Aurora build of Lugia. Playing Raikou. I'm playing Stoutland in here as well with the powerfuls, allowing you to take an additional prize card when you knock out basic Pokemon. This is going to be pretty cool with, of course, the modifiers of powerfuls, so you can punish some lower hit point stuff being in play. That's why you see 2 Boss as well as 2 Serena. The Thornton, super interesting as well. Yeah, pretty combo-y. Only seeing 1 Vacuum, 1 Collapsed makes me nervous. I'd kind of like more copies of both of these. What's our energy count? 4, 8, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. That sounds pretty healthy to me. The 1 V-Guard over... Oh, sorry, the 1 Capture over the 2nd V-Guard, or the Heat Fire, I guess, is a small consistency card, but the Aurora build doesn't have much space for other stuff. The thing that makes me very nervous is a 3-2 Lugia line. That sounds so greedy. Like, I know a lot of people try and cheat the space by cutting an Archeops, and I like that this is playing 4 Archeops, but I don't like a 3-2 Lugia at all. Maybe this is just they don't have enough Lugias online. Like, honestly, it's so early in the format that could be an actual reason. We see another Arcdura doing well, so maybe I'm just off on this deck, and maybe it's got a better matchup into Lugia than expected, but I feel like Lugia has to respect Duraludon, like, throughout the format, but it probably won't show up too much. Like, it's going to be that sub 5% deck in the field that you could theoretically hit, but you probably won't. This is playing 4 Collapses at Stadium of Choice, which is pretty wild. A lot of Reggie respect, I guess, is the way to put this, even playing the Avery as well. Because, of course, Reggies typically play triple Collapsed, so... Sorry, triple Path, so you have to constantly bounce that. Playing the Big Charms as well to try and stay out of range is reasonable. Just the 1 Parasol, but yeah, some interesting counts here. I like the counts of this list a little bit more than the previous one that we looked at. Seems pretty okay. So that's another top 8 there. For the 2 late nights at the end, the sort of largest tournaments, we'll also look at the metagame a little bit, because we've also had... It's like the most recent, so it's the most reasonable as to knee-jerk reactions. We go on to the Underground 63, and it looks like a Lugia Archeops went 10-1-1. Insane. And it's a colourless build of Lugia, so we've just analysed an Aurora-based build. Now we get to see a pretty simplistic colourless build, which is cool to see. It has Quad Path of the Peak. That's really a statement. Really a statement. Is playing the 1 Gift, which I'm a huge fan of. It's playing Dunce Manaphy. It's playing Gigas as its additional attacker apart from the Lugias. I don't really know what to think about the Gigas. I've been putting in Slacking recently, and I think Slacking has a lot of value, especially because it's easier to burst onto the board in a turn than Gigas, and it has bigger upside into other V-Star matchups. But I guess that's a wait and see to see whether there's more like Mew, or if there's more V-Star like mirrors and stuff like that, if Slacking is going to be the play. For me, I really don't like 4th Path over 4th Archeops. I think that's an easy flip-flop just to get into the game. But, I mean, Path's a good card. I won't begrudge anyone that. And it lets you win, like, going 2nd in Mirror, which does give you a lot of win percentage, but just make the deck work. That's still always my worry. Playing a couple Sharons in here as well. I've kind of gone cold on Sharon. I was much higher on it in my initial lists, but again, I've just become... I'm just starting to think more and more like, I just want the deck to work. I just want the deck to work. So I've like taken these out, and even just adding in more energy cards is reasonable. Adding in a 3rd Marnie, that sort of thing is where my head's at right now. I'm still a fan of Radiant Guardian in this list as well. Obviously, we're playing no Radiant right now, Radiant Guardy means that even if a Tina shuts off V-Guard, you have the secondary protection of the Rad Guardy. So if Tina is still extremely popular, I like the Radiant Guardy going into the colorless tank list. It also means you put yourself up to 330 hit points effectively against Zoro. I know we shouldn't really care too much about the Zoro, the Hisuian Zoro, but it's just something to bear in mind. We do see another Tina made finals. Again, triple Sinnoh. Yep, I think the 2/3 count of Sinnoh is pretty core in Tina by the looks of things going forward. Oh, I just love seeing the support account. It's so much cleaner. I mean, I would still play Roxanne, but it's just so clean. I guess because Lugia plays off the board, it makes Roxanne less powerful. I guess that's like the justification for not playing a Roxanne. It's like you can try and money them, but a Roxanne doesn't do too much to a Lugia in some instances. But I don't know. I still think Roxanne's good into a ton of like other matchups that aren't Lugia. This is playing a Manaphy, which you don't always see. Maybe some respect to some Raikou stuff, so you're not forced into the two prizes early on. But yeah, some cool counts going on here. 3 Sinnoh really is a statement that you need it sometimes. Like if you've gone first. No, it's like, yeah, if you've gone second into Lugia, you just need it. We see a different version of Zoro succeeding as well, which is just more great news for Zoroark. This one's not even playing any new cards from the new sets, is it? No, it's not. It's completely reactionary to the format, I guess you could say, because it's just added in an Appleton. That's it. Not even a Raichu. So this is just like someone was playing this before and it's worked out for them this time around. Happy days. Zoroark truly broken. We have a Reggie's also doing pretty well. The 5 stadium counts I'm a fan of. I've already discussed that. I think that's here to stay. Playing the Lotto. The 1 gift. Playing Powerful as well, which is interesting. Powerful plays around Jammer in Mew, which is a recent development. But I don't know if... I think Mew probably takes out the Jammer anyway because of the Seal Stone. But yeah, Powerful's an interesting one. We have a traditional Lost Box doing well. Once again, just the double path. Still not playing Serena. Again, like, I don't know why. I know you have cross switch. You have cross switches and Sableye and you're still not playing Serena. Mind blown. Give yourself an extra draw supporter. It's free. It's a bargain. Insane. Okay. We have Lugia Archeops. This time it's an Aurora build again, not playing the Raikou, just sticking with Yveltal Zard, so it's a smack face build. The Raikou basically gives you extra dimensions against one prize decks, but obviously one prize decks are still playing Manaphy, so there's a reason to like not play the Raikou even though it looks great on paper. We also have the bad Drapion from Vivid Voltage that can paralyze stuff, which is kind of interesting. Maybe set up 2 shots on like VMAXs maybe, but you already have Yveltal for VMAXs, and I don't think you realistically have the energy to do like a 4 energy swing with this guy and then into Yveltal or anything like that, so I think this is just baits, personally. Maybe you can do some cool plays, but you don't even have any spread stuff, so yeah, it doesn't make sense for me to play this Drapion. Interesting to see more Serena and Marnie than Research as well. I guess the Auroras give you more discard for Archeops in this exact build. Do like the double vacuum, big fan of that. But yeah, no Dunce or Manaphy, so you are kind of crumbed by some Raikous and some other lightning stuff, but cool to see. Cool to see. Then we have another Reggie's doing well. Reggie's... Oh, this one's playing a Grant. That's interesting. It's an extra means of discard it from hand, I guess. It can open up the Dragon's Horde that little bit more. Not sure why we're not seeing a Serena in the list, but there you go. I haven't seen Grant before, I don't think. Can Grant do any cool maths with Reggie as well? Reggie Rock? I don't know. We have another Lugia Archeops, another Aurora build. So the Aurora build has been more frequently doing well, but the Colorless builder so far has had the best record. This time we see Capturing Aroma, the 4 Capturing Aroma in addition to the 4 Incense Ultra and Quick Ball. So that's a real statement. You gotta flip coins, But the idea is you flip, what is it? You flip heads, you can get Archeops. You flip tails, you can get the basic chaps, and you're happy with basically either outcome. Is the theory. It's not always true, but it's the theory, which is kind of interesting. You got the block face wash energy combo, which is kind of cool. It can be really annoying for lost boxes because you can protect yourself from Sable Sprinkle, and you can block out some decks, which is cool. And you have the Stoutland, so you do have a lot for Lost Box and Lost Tina, which is nice. You have the Raikou in here, a lot of interesting stuff. And honestly, just buffing up the aroma counts, it's going to be a huge feels bad at times. But in theory, it's better than increasing your counts of this stuff. I just don't think it works too often. Like, I would at least play the 4 Archeops, the 4... Like, I would play 1 Capture Aroma and just buff these outs, honestly, if you really wanted to. I'm sus. I'm sus. Because Lugia's such a good lead in the deck as well. Oh, man. Makes me sad. Okay, but there's some cool stuff. I have been sciencing with the Wash Water in Lugia, to be fair, and it's kind of good. Onto the Goon Squad series. Looks like Tina was able to win with an 8-1-1 record. Double Sinnoh is basically the only adaptation, so this one's not even playing Serenas either. I've been praising every other Tina doing it, but this is basically like change 1 card from standard 60 and just jam it, and it did well. So yeah, good on them. We have another Lugia in 2nd place. This is the colorless list. Is this the same person? Yes, it's still Evan playing the same 60, I think. Is there any differences? No, I don't think there is. So we've already looked at this one, but clearly they are repping the colorless build to good success. Whereas everyone else is going crazy with the specials, going crazy with the Aurora shenanigans. It looks like a lot of people are just trying the 1 vacuum. The 1 vacuum makes me so nervous because you're a discard-heavy deck, and you need to have it like on the spot against certain stuff. Like any parasols or anything trying to tank, you know? And it's also just an extra stadium bounce. Like, this isn't even playing Pumpkaboo. It's only path bounces, a 1 vacuum, 1 collapse. That is machine of greed. I'm so mad. No pumpkin. Come on! Someone punish him. Okay, we have a Tina. Looks like a lot of people are cutting Roxanne. Answers on a postcard for why people are cutting Roxanne. I am confusion. More Arctura's doing well. Not surprising now that I'm seeing 1 vacuum in a lot of these lists, because it's really hard for Lugia to find it when it plays no draw engine either. So I think if we see disciplined Lugia Archeops, and as that deck cuts away fluff, Arctura will probably be getting worse as a deck. But there you go. There's another one still doing well. Still respectable records for the deck. Is this going to be the most played version of Arceus these days? I know there's still some Gudra talk. There's some Drago, which I've been trying out. There's some Tina Flying Peak. Still reasonable decks, by the way. But they're not really doing anything. We have another Fusion Mew doing pretty well here. This time just the 1 Serena. I don't know why you wouldn't play 2 Serena, 1 boss when you're already playing Pal Pad. You're already playing Pad, so you don't get punished like ever. Am I the only person that wants to play draw supporters? This is playing Marnie Path, which is kind of cheesy. Giving defense mode cards to the aggro combo feels so weird to me. I would just want combo to work as much as possible. And playing no like phones or anything makes me feel so bad. I think it's just so much more consistent with phones. You're still a combo deck, even with Seal Stones. Oh wow, so there is an Arc Drago. Interesting. So yeah, I've been trying out this deck myself a little bit. I really like the supporter line. I think it's exactly the supporter line I'm playing. It plays basically all the dragons I play. I just don't play Appleton. I don't play Drapion, but I also don't play... They play Drapion and Hawlucha. That's so much respect to like exactly Mew. I personally cut Drape and cut Hawlucha and play Radgardy, because Radgardy's better into Lost Tina, and it's still good into Mew. And I would just play more paths, to be honest. I don't think you need Collapse anymore, because you can Rolling Iron your way through Regis, and it's like way better for you than it was previously. Like, Arctina was still reasonable into Regis, even with just the one collapsed. But now you have Rolling Iron, it just becomes free. But yeah, I definitely think this is actually a deck in the format. It feels like a deck in the format to me for sure. Cool to see the first signs of that deck seeing some life. Now we get onto the two late nights. So let's have a look at the metagame first, just to see. So by this point, we're at, what's the date? It's the 15th, so it's been a few days, and it looks like a number of people have finally got their hands on Lugia's. It was the most played deck by far, 20% of the meta. Do you think LATAM is going to be more or less than this number? It'll be interesting to see. But then we have Mew, very popular. The Lost Zone deck's very popular. Palkintel always seems to be underrepresented in online tournaments, which is weird. Reggie's doing a lot in terms of popularity as well. For the sort of underrepresented decks, I think, right now, of what I think are some of the stronger decks, the Arc Drago deck is, like, non-existent in terms of popularity. Possibly some Vika Aleki will be having an uptick in popularity as well, because I think there are some results for it for the late nights. These are the only ones where I've had a quick, sneaky look to at least see which archetypes have been doing well. But yeah, a ton of Lugia, so that's interesting to note. And there's only one in top 8, but still a number in top 16, so that's always a good sign. And it looks to be an Aurora-based build that was winning. It is playing the trio of the ones you'd expect. It's playing Dunce Mana as well, so a ton of respect even for Mirror. It's playing a really low count of coloured energy, actually. Only the one Heatfire, not playing Hiding, and not playing Speed either. Those are the ones you normally see the most. I would expect Heat and Hiding in almost every list, to be honest. Regenerative energy is kind of copium. I just don't think that's right over like a lot of other things. Like there's so many good energy you could play instead, but there you go. I'm surprised to see three double turbo and not 2 and a twin. I don't mind the vacuum jammer split. It's a little bit greedy, but it's okay. It has big upsides into like Reggie's and other stuff like that, so I can definitely get on board with a 2-1-1 count. Something I've debated a lot. And honestly, I like the supporter lineup quite a lot. I think I would go for higher research counts than Marnie, but this is actually really close. So this is A, close to what I've been testing, and B has like the best record that we've seen so far, right? Apart from Evan. The best of the Aurora builds. So this is a really good 60 to sort of look at. I will always cringe at 3 Archeops. That's going to be me the entire time. If you want to do 3 Archeops yourself, you do you. But I think the Aurora build needs double Archeops in play. Like the colorless build of Lugia can get away with 1 Archeops sometimes. It can still win games. I think this deck cannot win games if it only gets 1 Primal Turbo out. So just play 4. I'll still always advocate for 4. It's like when I played ADP Zacian and always played 4 Zacian because Zacian was just broken turn 1 to end your turn on. But whatever. We have another Fusion Mew. So all the Mew lists that we've seen so far winning have all been Fusion Mews. I don't know if it's just people experimenting with Fusion Mew again and thinking like, oh, we have Forest Seal Stone, so let's try this out, before possibly going back to defensive builds. This one still does play Roxanne Path. This one doesn't play any Serena. Why not? Why not? You can finally play Drill Supporters and you choose not to. I'm so mad. I'm so mad. Oh my goodness. Okay. We have Lost Box. Looks like Lost Box is just sort of getting by without changing too much. This is playing no paths. It's just playing Temple and Basin, which is kind of interesting. Temple can be a way to steal some turns against Reggie, maybe. Playing double Roxanne as well, which you don't often see. Triple Clara. Why would you play triple Clara 2 Roxanne when you could just play 2-1 and pad and gain a space? That could be an extra switch card or a fog crystal. That's so weird. And the capture's in here. Interesting. Some interesting ideas going on in that list. We have another one. Is this the same one I've just seen? Looks like it. Or is it two players from a similar region? I'm getting lost. Yeah, they were both very similar 60s. Really interesting to see Captures sneaking into the list over like Fog Crystal. Fog Crystal's just so versatile in the mid game. I know Capture's obviously good in the opening just for the selecting anyway, because it's a retreat and a Confe, so it's like it's less versatile than a Fog, but it does more in a one card opening hand type thing. So that's interesting. All of my initial builds played Captures, and then they kind of fell by the wayside. Here's some really interesting stuff, though. These next three decks definitely worth looking at. We have a Vika Aleki with 11-3-1. Very spicy to see. And it does seem to be, like I said, it wasn't very popular. Not many people played the deck, and 2 made top 8. So that's a real big boast for the list. We've got, as you'd expect, some water and lightning going on with E-searches, because you are playing Melanie. Also, choosing to play 1 V-Guard and 1 Cape, kind of interesting. V-Guard could be a really big mirror tech, actually, just thinking about it now. And the Cape can sometimes be pretty cool as well. V-Guard, I guess, can also be used like proactively. If someone's proactively belted something, and you can be like, okay, let's cancel that out real quick. I really like the support account. I think that's exactly how I had my support accounts. Honestly, this looks really similar to the list I initially posted on my channel. I think the differences were like playing a V-Guard and playing a Cape are kind of like the 2 big things that I wasn't playing that they've chosen to, but this is really similar to where my initial thoughts were at with the list, so happy to see it doing well with those counts as well. We have another Vika Aleki. This time a little bit lower on those energies. Is playing a second Sealstone. Is playing an Avery. Is playing Drapion as well. So that's so weird to play a Drapion V-Star and a Forest and 2 Forest Sealstones. Is it a matchup dependent reason to Hazard Star? I don't really know. I think you'll pick. For me, pick your poison at that point, right? Avery's an interesting one. Playing no Serenas either, so just heavy boss. I know Paralyzing Bolt is often really good at just taking cheap prizes, so I can see why boss is like still a heavy count. But surprising to see no Serenas in here either. Playing the shoes, which I don't think were in the last list. Not playing any E-Search is really weird when you're only playing 6 outs to Lightning. Some interesting stuff going on here, for sure, but yeah, kudos to Vika Aleki. It's made a statement. It's started off strong. We even see a energy denial control-y-ish deck with win cons, including but not limited to route, Yveltal spamming energy removal, tricky steps, which moves an energy from one of your opponents active to their bench as well. It also has a prize-taking win condition of Radiant Jirachi as well. So what's really cool about this deck, rather than having like Mewtwo V Union as like a finisher, you can run your opponent out of stuff and then just start flipping coins with this guy. And it puts a ton of pressure on things. And this really makes people play differently into Control as well. Just the threat of this card, even without any Glimwoods, you just randomly cheese turns out of people and just make people put stuff down and play so differently. The threat of this card, honestly, is like game-changing for this sort of archetype. Absolutely nutty that we see this. It's got Block Face Wash, which is a combo that we've talked about earlier with Lugia. It's got, yeah, a lot to work with here. I'll have to do a video on the channel of this soon, because there's definitely something here. I've come up against a lot of heavy Yveltal Cry of Destruction decks as I've been playing Lugia, and it has been a headache. It has been a problem. So we'll see how that develops and comes along. This deck doesn't have a full infinite combo, does it? It's not completely infinite, right? Because you have Eldegoss, but you don't have like the Yelchir Silene stuff. That could be something that we work on, or possibly it's something where we add in even Pidgeot V or something in some stadiums. But there's definitely something here. I think energy removal is definitely annoying for Lugia, because you can just remove so many with Yveltals that you can make life difficult for them. And there's other toys at play as well, such as the Jirachi, which really changes the way some decks play against you, which is also very important. So yeah, really want to explore this more. I think it has a ton of legs going forward, honestly. We also just round out the top 8 with a Palkintel, which we haven't seen much of, to be honest. And this is playing Serena and Sinnoh, which is basically exactly the two things that I added to my list when I changed Palkintel for the first time. So definitely makes sense. This is a candy list, though, with captures and just one VIP. But yes, it seems very reasonable with the very thick dealing lines going on in there. So very solid record there as well for Palkintel, which is still adapting. I think Palkintel suffers that there's lightning stuff in the game, and lightning techs for Lugia, and I think it's quite bad into Lugia, personally. That's like my initial knee-jerk reactions, but I think obviously Palkintel still has the consistency, and the fact that it can tutor all sorts of combos means we can find the right techs to answer some decks. It'll still be a force in the game. I just don't think it's got that like tier 1 alongside Tina status that it had pre-Tempest. Let's have a look at the final tournament then. And another Lugia made finals. So the first two late nights, it's been a Lugia win and then Lugia in second, which is, really big statement for Lugia. Another one in top 8, and then another one in top 16. Or another 2 in top 16. Another 4 in top 16. Yeah, lots of Lugia. So even though it's, it's the most played deck again here, right? But it's still managing a positive win rate, which is very important to note. There's a few more Vika in this one, a few more Reggies in this one than last time. Interesting to see. So let's have a look at the winning Lost Box. This is a Gate build of Lost Box with amazing rare Rayquaza. Just give me a minute while I think of words to say. Why? I mean, it's a lot of damage, but you can do a lot of damage with a lot of other things and not scuff your energy lineup even more than you already are. Zapdos can't be this valuable to play fighting energy. This is so wonky. What was the matchups? Its only loss was to Lugia and Mirror. Wow, crazy. And it tied a Gigas. This is wild. So we have Ice Cube, we have the Greninja package going on, we have the core of Cram Sable. We obviously have the Lightning Tech Attacker of Raikou. Zapdos coming in is so interesting. It's a name I haven't heard in a long time. They didn't face anything with fighting weakness. Oh, they faced one Arc Flying P. I feel like the Zapdos probably didn't do a lot for them. Yeah, the Raikou is just so funny. The triple rod quad gate, triple Raihan. Ugh. Just swinging with the burst. Coming in. I mean, it's a lot of damage, right? It's just... I guess... We're testing it. I guess we're just testing it, right? I guess there's nothing else I can say. Insane. This deck isn't even playing any stadiums. Not even just like one training court. Despite being so Greninja reliant with this many energies. Oh. Well, there's something to it. Certainly something to it. Madness. And then we have a colourless build once again of the Lugia. It's really starting to trigger me that a lot of these Lugias are playing 3 Archeops and doing well. I'm just going to shake my head every time and tell myself that I'm right. And sleep easy at night, but there we go. A very simplistic Tina. I think Tina stays, like, top tier, honestly. It doesn't need to change much. Like, just adding in 2 Sinnohs means you're fighting on even footing with most Lugias. And that's just still so appealing, because you're already even against most of the rest of the format. And you gain Serena, which is just great. Oh, cool. We see the Kyogre combo build of Lost Box as well. Lost Box is just so cool, isn't it? What a cool bit of deck. And it looks like a lot of people are trying out multi-prize stuff, which means Lost Box is just, like, doing bits. So yeah, we probably need to see some more Marnie path to disrupt some of these gate builds of Lost Box. One thing that's been distinctly lacking from our results has been any form of Arceus deck, and they're still the best deliverers of Marnie Path nonsense. We have an Aurora build of Lugia. This time it's adding in Zekrom, which can paralyze stuff. It only hits 130, which makes me a little bit nervous. Like, I don't know why you wouldn't just play Raikou at that stage, make them fill their board with other stuff. And the more I've tested Lugia, the more I know that their bench is kind of like out of their control at times, because they need to always have double Archeops, always have another threat on board. And then they don't always have space for, like, Dunce Manaphy. It's, like, really hard for them to have not used a Crobat or Luminion to get into the game. Or just started a random Pokemon that's not Lugia or whatever. So I'm surprised this isn't Raikou. The Paralysis stuff is cool. It lets you do plays, but I feel like the Amazing Rare's just more versatile in more matchups. I guess you're already playing Stoutland, so maybe you can set some stuff up for Stoutland, which is kind of wonky. I really don't like Professor Burnett either. I think that's copium. Just play a 4 for Archeops. it's so simple. Play 4 Archeops and 4 Incense instead of this. What is this? If you haven't noticed in my voice, I have a cold, so I'm probably being quite cold myself to a lot of these lists. We have another fusion build of Mew with the Rocks Path combination still in here. Very cool to see. Obviously, you can keep your Sealstone around and Rocks Path knowing that you can always get out, which is kind of nice. Again, no phones, though. Where are the phones at? Phones are burst. Some more Lost Box. Lost Box has been really killing it online. Is that another Kyogre build doing well? What in the world? Insane. Two Japanese players rocking the Kyogre. Mad. And then it's another fusion build coming in. This time, we finally see a Serena. We finally see a draw supporter. Happy days. The one draw supporter list. This is playing Path, but no hand disruption to go against it, which is so weird. So weird. Like, what's the point of Path if you're not going to play hand disruption? What is the point? I need to have a lie down after looking at some of these lists. But there you go. That's our first week. Lugia, I think, has been on par with what I expected. It's had some big results. It's not the easiest deck to play, and people are getting greedy already. And I think as we refine and get to that point where it's similar to Palkia, similar to Tina, where we get to like 57 cards, and then you tinker with your couple of spaces, I think that's when Lugia is going to feel really, really, really strong. Lost Box has been really performing well in these late nights. Tina's still been performing very well, but that's only natural because it was already 58 cards and they just added in a Temple of Sinnoh and like a Serena, and then it's like a better deck in general. We didn't see much from the Vika Alekis in the second tournament, and it had a slightly negative win rate, which is worrying. I think the things that I'm interested in how the format develops is that Palkintel, I mean, it's so low played right now. Palkintel is very underplayed. Arceus is mostly being played with Duraludon, which I think is just so wrong. I mean, its win rate is just pants, right? It's just such a bad deck. But yeah, I'm expecting... There's even a lot of Mew. So Tina probably still needs to play Drapion, and then it's just like plays the same 60 with like 2 card differences, or maybe 3 card differences from how it is now, and I still think it's a top deck. We need to see more from Palkintel. We need to see how it reacts to Lugia Archeops, because right now it's falling rapidly down the list in terms of popularity. Its overall win rate wasn't bad, and it still made some top 8s. So I don't think it's like off the map terrible. It's never going to drop that low. But we have to see the best answers for the Lugia matchup. And yeah, there's a massive gap in Arceus right now. Either Arctina Pika, which I think is still a good deck, or Arc Drago, where you have Dura, Tina, and Gudra, I think are both decks in the game, and it's going to add this roller coaster inconsistency anyone can brick, because they're still the best Marnie Path deck in the game, which is very effective into this, still effective into this, really good into Lost Zone box now that you have the Gudra, at least in the Drago part. It's still very good into Vika Aleki as well, because it doesn't care too much about item lock. So I think like it's silly to write off Starbirth this early. I think it's still got so much potential. It's funny that Arctina did so badly down here, but Arc Flying Peak still did well. So yeah, I want to see a return of Arceus. As a Marnie Path gamer, I feel like it still has a lot of legs in the format. I'd like to hear your thoughts on my initial thoughts of this week. How have you found Lugia in testing so far? How have you found Reggie's now that we can play it again on the ladder? What are your thoughts on these Mirage Gate builds of Lost Box as well? I'll hear it all down below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in another video tomorrow. Cheers.